What's going on, guys? Back for another week of fights, this time UFC 272 pay-per-view card, and this is what a pay-per-view card should look like in the UFC. Fun fights from start to bottom. Colby Covington and George Masvidal is a fun grudge match in the welterweight division. Kind of a long time coming, waiting for these two to square off. There's also a fun female fight that there's some bad blood with in the middle of the card as well. I'm looking forward to pretty much every fight on this card, so let's keep this win streak going. We're doing pretty well here, and I feel like there's some good reads on this card as well, some underdogs I like. So without further ado, let's get into this breakdown. Okay, we're starting off the night with a fun light heavyweight bout between Oleksiejczuk taking on Dustin Jacoby. And these are two guys that I really do like in the 205 division. I know that I do have a strong lean on this fight, but as a fan of MMA, I do like both of these guys. Oleksiejczuk, the underdog here at plus 160. The comeback Dustin Jacoby is the favorite at minus 190. So a little bit of a physical advantage for Jacoby here, being 3 inches taller than his opponent, Oleksiejczuk, only 6 foot tall. Kind of a smaller guy for the 205 division. 6 foot tall, 74-inch reach, so lacking 2 inches of reach there as well. This comes down to a pretty simple fight because it'll probably be on the feet most likely. Neither of these two guys really attempt many takedowns, and they're kind of deficient on the ground against the opponents that have beat them there. So even Dustin Jacoby, as big as he is, he usually struggles with grapplers and guys who are like more physically imposing and strong than him. Guys like Ian Kuntalaba, who he struggled with and managed to kind of luckily escape with just a draw in that fight, even though I think he probably should have lost. Dustin Jacoby, a lot to like with this guy in the feet. He had a small stint in the UFC back in 2012 where he went 0-2 and then kind of took a break from mixed martial arts and went and had about an 18-fight career in pro kickboxing. So with this being a striking battle, I mean, he definitely has a more diverse arsenal of tools, I think, in this fight to win. Very good range control. Even though he's already the bigger guy, he can really control range much better than I think Oleksiejczuk is going to be prepared to get in range against him here. So Oleksiejczuk, you know, he's had a kind of a win streak of his own here. I think a split decision in the mix against Modestas Bukauskas. Other than that, we kind of see the, even though I do like Oleksiejczuk just because, you know, he's got a very exciting style when he's turned on for a fight, when he's, he kind of has two parts to him. Sometimes he's timid, sometimes he's a little bit more aggressive. When we see that aggressive version of him, usually it's against guys that, you know, he just is able to beat talent-wise. Like, it seems like there's a ceiling with Oleksiejczuk, guys that he can beat. Guys like John Vellante, obviously. Guys like Ante Gulov, you know, Shamil Gamzatov in his last fight. And then there's a couple of guys, once he reaches that next level of competition in the division, like a Jimmy Crute or an OSP, he's going to lose to those guys. So it's kind of a game of, like, where do we think Dustin Jacoby is in that list? And I think he's definitely more towards the OSP, towards the Jimmy Crute side, and less like a John Vellante. I think Jacoby's more skilled than that, and I think he's going to have his way with a striking battle here with Oleksiejczuk. And Oleksiejczuk, even in his last fight against Shamil Gamzatov, even though he was able to dismantle Gamzatov, who in my opinion is not that great, he was able to recklessly go into the pocket, into phone book range against Gamzatov and unload shots on him at will that were all landing. And Gamzatov was pretty much tired by like 2 minutes into that fight. So, and even still, Gamzatov was still able to, although it wasn't with much power, he was still able to touch Oleksiejczuk. So these are some problems and some mistakes I don't think that Jacoby's going to make. I think Gamzatov had basically no distance control against Oleksiejczuk. So I think if Mikhail tries to be that aggressive against Dustin Jacoby, he's going to have some issues. Minus 190, I think a fair price, a fair underdog price for Jacoby here. Am I that excited to go out and bet it? Not really, but I think there's worse spots in this card. You can look at the time props, the over and under 2.5 is probably where this is set at. I haven't looked at this myself, but with the short fight time for Oleksiejczuk, not that Jacoby's the most power puncher type of guy, not a big power striker, not a lot of finishes at the higher level, but you know, you could look at the under in this fight. If it was juicy enough, I'd probably look that way. But my prediction for this will be Jacoby to outpoint Oleksiejczuk to a clear-cut unanimous decision. Okay, up next, the lightweight bout between Devontae Smith and Ludovic Klein. This fight is at 155, although Ludovic Klein is coming up a weight class on short notice, replacing Eric Gonzalez, who got injured, I believe. So He's going to be slightly outsized here. Both guys are young, 28 for Smith, 27 for Klein. Klein giving up 2 inches of height at 5'7" and 2 inches of reach as well. A very crafty striker, though. I saw this guy just before he got to the UFC. He was in that Slovakian promotion over there that's pretty well known, Octagon, where he was getting very, very clean head kick KOs over there at featherweight. He leads it up nicely with a very, very crisp, southpaw 1-2, and then comes in with that left high kick that's hidden right behind the cross. So he's iced many opponents like that. It was no different when he came into the UFC. He knocked out Shane Young the same way. Then losing a close decision to Mike Trezano. And then also coming in as a 3-1 favorite over Nate Landwehr, I believe, when that closed, and he lost by a third-round submission. So he does a little bit too much of being a little bit hesitant to open up, hesitant to get ahead on the scorecards, and he tries to pick his shots a little bit too much these days, in my opinion. And a lot of these finishes in the regional scene were against guys that were his size or slightly smaller, is what I've noticed. So it's going to be a tough task against Devontae Smith. I've got my issues with Smith as well, but overall I do like him. He's got clean technique on his strikes, very fast striker, pretty active on the numbers. His averages per minute are pretty good. My issues with him is he's never been to a decision before. I believe that's true still at this point in his career, never been to a decision, which becomes to be a little bit of a red flag as far as I'm concerned. When I see these guys who've never been to a decision, I'm looking to fade them as much as I can. Just because if you can't make it to the end of a fight, you can't really sustain a long, successful career that way, especially as you move up the ladder in the division. So that's an issue. And then also, he's been knocked out a few times in his career already. The most notable, the most surprising one was against Kama Worthy, where he dropped the ball as a big favorite. Kama Worthy was able to ice him in that fight. So there's a couple of durability issues as well for Devontae Smith. Looking at the line here. Let's see here. Devontae Smith, minus 170 favorite over Ludovic Klein, plus 145 underdog. The price isn't that bad on Ludovic Klein as an underdog. I think there's a lot to like with him. Clear path to victory as far as, if you think Devontae Smith has chin issues, you should see the strong striking of Ludovic Klein. My issue is just that he's coming up a weight class, which is already a knock against him. I already have questions since he's on a 2-fight losing streak. And now he's on short notice, too. So it's kind of 3 strikes and you're out as far as me picking Ludovic Klein. I like Devontae Smith a lot, I can look past a couple of those, especially his last fight, getting knocked out, getting TKO'd by Jimmy Mullarkey. That's not a bad look. Mullarkey has proven to be a pretty formidable opponent. I think that the pressure style of Devontae Smith will be enough to take out Klein, at least back him up and make him timid to throw. I think Devontae Smith can match the speed of Klein. And if Klein wants to mix it up with some takedowns, I mean, we saw against Justin James, Devontae Smith is at least competent enough to hit some reversals, control time on top, and at least scramble to his feet. So with all those things considered, I'm going to choose Devontae Smith. I'm not very keen on betting him straight up on the money line. I think if you wanted to look at a cheeky spot here, it'd be like the under 2.5. I'm sure this fight will be lined at over 1.5, like the over-under at 1.5. But if you can get a book that has under 2.5, if that's juicy enough, I'd take that. Or a fight doesn't go to decision just as well. They might be onto it, but I'll have to take a look at the numbers on that. But that might be my look, is look at the unders of this fight not going to the scorecards. But give me Devontae Smith to win. It's hard for me to choose him to win by decision since he's never gone that route. So maybe give me him by like a late round stoppage by strike. So like KO, TKO, round 2 or 3 for Devontae Smith. Okay, up next we got a flyweight bout between Tagir Ulanbekov, 13-1, Russian prospect, versus Tim Elliott, the much older, much more grizzled veteran of the flyweight division, UFC veteran, kind of a gatekeeper role at this point for Tim Elliott. He's got unorthodox striking. He's got the ability to wrestle, but against Tagir Ulanbekov, he's probably going to want to try to keep this on the feet as much as possible and just kind of outpoint Tagir Ulanbekov, which is very possible. Tagir is a minus 230 favorite, plus 190 the underdog price on Tim Elliott. And I got to say, it's tempting. That Tim Elliott underdog price tag is tempting. And I struggle with this one because Tagir has just not looked that impressive. He's got that Russian style where he uses the hands to kind of get in close and take down his opponent. He spends over 50% of his fight time in controlled positions, which is great, but he's not very active on top, and significant strike-wise in his last fight against Alan Nascimento, it made for a very, very close decision. Very, very, for people who parlayed him up like I did on that card, and I think that was UFC 267. I mean, it was the first fight of the night. Man, it was a sweat, so he had like 5 significant strikes in round 1 against Allen, 4 in round 2, and 9 in round 3. Significant strikes, so, but still 12 minutes of control time. So, I love the control time. I just wish he was more active. So, I don't know. I mean, I think I could see, Tim Elliott plus 190, but he's 35 years old at flyweight. He's been submitted time and time again. I don't know. If I were to take Tim Elliott, I would probably take plus 400 by decision. I see that prop out there. From a prediction standpoint, I'm going to have to go with the younger flyweight, the one with more momentum, the one that should really be 14-0. He comes in with a clear game plan, whether he's that active on the significant strike count or not. Clear game plan, gets the control time. I can see him maybe finding a submission here, but I'm going to take Ulanbekov. I'm going to predict him to win by decision, but I'm not touching that minus 230 price tag. I think that's too wide considering how close his last fight was, and he's not looked that impressive. So I'll take him to win. I have to predict him as the younger guy to win this fight. Like I said, clear game plan, but if you're going to bet this fight, I'd almost go Tim Elliott by decision at plus 400. I think that's way more value than Tagir's money line. Okay, up next, a bantamweight bout between Brian Boom Kelleher taking on the cousin of Khabib, who is Umar Nurmagomedov, the 13-0 streaking prospect. This guy is pretty much, one of those rinse and repeat chain wrestling, takedown Russian fighters that you would expect with the last name Nurmagomedov. I mean, the guy's pretty darn good at it too at 135. Pretty serviceable on the feet as well. Some good question mark kicks, high kicks, nice quick 1-2s. I mean, he's got a lot of good striking, inside-outside leg kicks. I mean, he's got a good striking that really, mixes in well with the takedown, because as soon as you're defending against some of those strikes or reacting to the kicks, he's right there, sprints to your waist, and it gets his hands locked, it's over, you're on the ground. And then once it's on the ground, he's really, really good at getting the hooks in with incredible dexterity with his feet, almost like BJ Penn back in the day. He's able to get those hooks in, get that back position, and usually sink in a choke. He was able to do that against Sergey Morozov most recently, who, that win ages very, very well. We know how good Sergey is with the takedowns and, just the grappling aptitude. So the fact that he was panicking the whole fight, looking to get back to his feet, just tells you how good Umar is on the ground. So that's the problem with Brian Kelleher, and probably why this is the biggest favorite on the card is Umar. Minus 700 is Umar Nurmagomedov. Plus 500 is around about what you'll get plus money on Brian Kelleher. A little bit wide, of course, as you would expect with the last name Nurmagomedov. But I think part of what's built in that price tag is that when Brian Kelleher is out sized in a match, which is most of the time at 5'6", 66-inch reach, when he's outmatched, sometimes he can use that the grappling, the takedowns of his own to sort of nullify the size difference in a match. He's not going to have that option here, so that cuts out one of his win conditions that he's kind of accustomed to getting. And like in his past 2 victories, both of them came by him getting the takedowns, mixing in the grappling, so on and so forth. So he's not going to have that option. I think his main path to victory in this fight is to counter off of some of the reckless strikes that Umar throws. Umar is known to, in the tape that I've seen, he kind of throws question mark kicks, throws axe kicks even, throws a lot of kicks with reckless abandon, keeping his chin sort of up in the air. And I think he could get touched by Brian here. If Brian is able to counter off the kicks, land something big, I think that would be his main path to victory in this fight. The chances of that happening, I think, are relatively slim. I think what's going to happen is he's going to get taken down at will, held down, probably, get Umar on his back and around his neck, and I think he'll be submitted in round 2 by rear naked choke. So give me Umar Nurmagomedov to win this. I'm not going to play probably the minus 700 money line on this guy, but I think he is parlayable on Saturday night. And if you want to look inside the distance or buy submission props, I'd probably look that way on him. Time for an exciting one here, a women's flyweight bout between Maria Agapova and Marina Moroz. This one is pretty dramatic. This is what I alluded to at the beginning of the video, where there's not only the Colby Covington, George Masvidal bad blood, but between these two, Agapova and Marina Moroz have kind of gone back and forth for a year or two now. Moroz made a bunch of claims about Agapova, saying that she's kind of aired out a bunch of rumors about her being, some weird party girl on a bunch of drugs, having violent altercations with gym members and gym staff, threatening to stab people, getting arrested, all kinds of stuff that Moroz has thrown Agapova's way. And honestly, they're probably justified claims. There's probably some truth to them, because Maria Agapova just seems like an all-around crazy person, and she fights like it. But I can find something to like in that if I'm betting Agapova. I think a little aggression in the women's divisions goes a long way. She's only 24 years old. Very, very powerful. Good winging hooks, nice kicks to the body, round kicks to the head. And she got a little bit too aggressive when she fought Shanna Dobson. That was her one mistake. That was like one of the biggest betting upsets in UFC history. She was like almost a minus 1,000 in some spots over Shanna Dobson. Completely gassed out by the end of round one, and then ended up getting stopped in round two. So she learned from that. She took some time off, regrouped, came back against Sabina Mazo end of last year, and had a much more patient, much more mature game plan. Finally finishing her in round three. A nice club and sub victory over Sabina Mazo, so that looks a lot better. She throws a lot of significant strikes per minute. I like that. A lot of good activity. Very, very aggressive, like I said, comes forward. Is not afraid to come after her opponent and take the center of the cage and pressure her opponent. There's a lot to like about that. And aggression and that kind of power, that kind of finishing ability, and that kind of aggression takes you a long way in the women's divisions, especially at flyweight. And I think that's going to be part of her victory over Marina Moroz. Now, Moroz, has pretty good skills. 30 years old, 5'7", 67-inch reach, so a bit of a reach disadvantage, but a height advantage by an inch. But the problem is she hasn't fought in almost 2 years. This month it'll be 2 years since she's fought. And she's pulled out of, I think, like 5 or 6 fights consecutively. So some were visa issues, some were some unnamed issues. So we're not really sure what's going on with her. I think she might have spoken about it in some interviews, but who really knows what's going on for sure with her, whether it's injuries plaguing her or otherwise. And I'm not one to get into the narratives of fighters. I'm not one to kind of get into their mind state, but you got to believe that being a Ukrainian fighter, that some of the world events right now are going to kind of either hold her back or give her more of a reason to fight for a victory here. So I'm not really sure which way that goes for Marina Moroz, but I'm not sure if 2 years off coupled with what's going on at home is going to help her out here. And then pulling out of all the bouts. I wouldn't be surprised if she pulls out of this bout. So who knows if this fight will happen, but if it does, I think Maria Agapova has the skills to win this fight. I certainly do. I think that, Marina Moroz, part of her victory to win these fights is her clinch. Her clinch game is pretty strong. She has good control time in the clinch. She has trouble taking her opponents down, but when she does get them to the ground, she does have pretty good control that she has displayed. She's had some submissions off of her back, but I'd say if she's going to win this fight, it would be being active on the feet, even though she has pretty bad accuracy with her strikes, and a pretty poor takedown offense as well. But if she can get it to the ground, if Maria Agapova, this is how I see her winning this fight, Marina Moroz. If Agapova overextends herself in some sort of weird, kind of like Shayna Dobson-like game plan, she goes in here with this bad blood on her mind, tries to finish Moroz with strikes early, can't get her out of there, and then gasses out. Marina Moroz could then have an easier time taking her down, and once she does get her opponents to the ground, she does have pretty good top control. So maybe that will be her path to victory here, but that would be if Maria Agapova gasses out. That would be if Maria Agapova gives up the takedowns, and that would be if Marina Moroz doesn't look like she has a bunch of ring rust after being gone for 2 years. I think she's going to come in here and be a little bit out of place after 2 years, be very, very timid, get backed up by Maria Agapova, who's much more powerful, much more aggressive, and I think she's going to get taken out in this fight. I can't bank on Agapova to, finish Marina Moroz. I don't have the data to support that Moroz will get finished that way by strikes or something like that, but I could at least think that in a 3-round fight, Agapova will do more to secure a pretty strong decision in this fight. So give me Agapova to win. Pretty clear-cut unanimous decision over Marina Moroz. Now, as far as the betting lines go for this fight, -200 for Agapova and about +170 for Marina Moroz. I'd say that's about fair. I know the betting market doesn't really quite know where to balance out Maria Agapova. She starts off as an underdog, comes back as a giant favorite, goes back to an underdog again, now back to a favorite. So who knows what's going to happen. I think this is going to be a big learning experience for everybody involved here, the bookies, the bettors, and the fighters alike. But I'd say for -200, I think that's about right for somebody who hasn't been, like I said, somebody who hasn't been in the octagon as long as Marina Moroz. I think that she deserves to be at least this much of a +170 underdog in this fight. So I kind of agree with the line. Am I rushing to bet Maria Agapova at -200 here? Not quite, because there's still some question marks regarding her gas tank and whatnot, but I can see why the lines are priced the way they are. Okay, up next, we've got a 205 bout between Kennedy Nzechukwu and Nikolai Negumereanu. I find this fight to probably be the lowest level fight on the entire card. It's a fight that I don't have a strong read on, I have to admit, from the get-go. Both guys are pretty young. Negumereanu is 27. Kennedy is 29. Kennedy actually went into, the UFC, the Dana White Contender Series, with just a couple of pro bouts under his belt. So he's definitely a little inexperienced. Nikolai definitely has more finishes and more impressive looking resume, but it's off the regional scene against a lot of sketchy low-level guys. He looked like a monster on the regional scene. If you watch some of the tape, I mean, he's taking guys out with his hands, just muscling them, throwing them to the mat, with some judo throws and whatnot, but mostly just muscling these guys. Getting some good ground and pound positions and stoppages that way. But these guys have losing records for the most part. I mean, he did come into the UFC. The bout that I think is his biggest to date is the Oleksiejczuk fight, where he won a decision, a very close decision. But the better of the striking, some ground control time, more effective striking, and won the fight. Then he comes in, most recently against Ike Villanueva, a fight he's supposed to win. And he does. I mean, he makes Ike look like he's supposed to and finishes him very, very early. So he does have some power. And after the Nzechukwu fight, where he faced Dawoon Jung and pretty much blocked a lot of those elbows with his forearms, but still ended up getting knocked out cold, face to the canvas, taking a nap with some, Dawoon Jung is powerful, but, those elbows just did not look like they put somebody out like that, especially as big as Kennedy Nzechukwu at 6'5", 83-inch reach. So he may have some durability concerns here. The fact that he's a -145 favorite, I just cannot imagine putting money on him after the few performances we've seen. He looks pretty lackluster. I mean, sure, he has power. When Carlos Ulberg was hurt, he was able to put him out with a massive hook against the cage. Danilo Marques, standing TKO, punches and bunches against the unanswered shots that Danilo Marques took. But you have to look at those fights and what happened before these stoppages. I mean, Carlos Ulberg unloaded and, almost had Kennedy out of there. If he didn't tire out, he probably would have won the fight. Danilo Marques had Kennedy controlled for most of the fight before he eventually tired, and just did not have the striking on the feet to keep up with Kennedy. Kennedy doesn't do a whole lot of things well, in my eyes. I mean, he's got a nice, he's got the long 83-inch reach, which is crazy, but then he doesn't use it that well. He uses he does have a quick, snappy jab that he uses to keep distance sometimes, but the other things he keeps distance with or attacks with are he has this very, very slow knee that he throws sometimes, some very slow kicks. I think I could see this, the advantageous Nikolai Negumereanu. I think he could take some of those slow knees, grab a slow kick, maybe get Kennedy to the ground, the much bigger man to the ground. He does have some good throws off the cage, does Nikolai. So maybe the size of Kennedy will kind of do him a disservice here. Maybe center of gravity is so high from the 6'5" Kennedy and Nzechukwu that Nikolai is able to use some of that judo technique and use that size against him, get him to the ground, or I think he'll be stuck under Nikolai's, the top pressure he's shown, the ability to stay on top, the ground and pound that Nikolai's thrown, and some of the regional scene tape I watched is pretty good, and I think that Kennedy won't be able to, really have many answers to that. So that's really the only path to victory I see for Nikolai, is probably getting this fight to the ground. If he gets in range and, kind of unmasks some more of the durability concerns that we've kind of seen from Kennedy in his last fight, that could be a path as well. But I think he's going to have to get this fight to the ground, win minutes on the ground, get a lot of significant strikes on the top position from Kennedy. And I think it's a very doable strategy. So I'm not rushing to bet either side here, but I think at underdog price, a fight that I see very 50-50, I'm going to take Nikolai Negumereanu to get the upset here. He's a young guy, probably still improving as well. So if he can get this fight to the ground, I think he can. I'm not sure if he finishes Kennedy and Nzechukwu here, but he can at least get a clear-cut decision. So give me Nikolai by decision here. Okay, up next about women's strawweight. Xiaonan Yan taking on Marina Rodriguez. This is kind of a fun fight just because it's a striker's delight, I believe, and both of these women will not have to deal with the adversity of the grappling, which they're both weak in. They're both preferring to be, on their feet, not on their back. We saw in the last fight with Yan Xiaonan, that's with Carla Esparza, that was her demise, getting stopped because she could not get back up to her feet, and she got trapped. So Marina Rodriguez had to shore up her grappling game, defensive grappling game against Amanda Ribas. So both of them have the same affliction, of not dealing with that grappling too well. But in this bout, I think it'll be a little bit closer. I mean, Marina Rodriguez, minus 255 favorite currently over the plus 205 underdog in Yan Xiaonan. I think that's a little unfair. I don't think that's that great. I think it's a little bit inflated because of Marina Rodriguez having a little bit more name value in her recent wins, having that main event slot probably. So that's probably partially why this number's ballooned up. You got to remember she's 34 years old in the strawweight, so kind of pushing it. The younger by 2 years, 32 years old for Yan Xiaonan. Yeah, I don't know. I think this plays out pretty close as far as like total strikes. Kind of like last week, we had a couple of women's fights like this where it's total strikes versus effective strikes. Marina Rodriguez's strikes just seem to hit differently at 115. If you have some sort of power, some sort of finishing ability at this women's strawweight weight class, I think that gives you a huge advantage and a huge ability to have an edge over pretty much everybody in the division at 115. These women are small. They just can't crack very hard, but Marina Rodriguez can. She really cuts women up, gets their attention with the strikes. There's just a different kind of power with them. So because of that, I would pick Rodriguez to win. I wouldn't hate anybody for taking a shot on Yan Xiaonan here. I think this, this plus 205 price tag I think all the value is on her. But as a straight prediction, I would think Marina Rodriguez will do enough to win this fight, especially since she won't have to be defending against takedowns or worrying about that threat of the grappling. I think she might even get more output than she normally does in this fight. So give me Marina Rodriguez to win a clear-cut decision here. Up next at lightweight, we've got Jalen Turner taking on Jamie Mullarkey. Two guys that I'm pretty fond of. Both have a fun style, kind of kill or be killed type of fighters here. Expect violence here. Jalen Turner, 26, Jamie Mullarkey, 27, both young guys. So they should be kind of improving fight to fight. At least minor changes. So 6'3" for Jalen Turner with a 77-inch reach, and Jamie Mullarkey, 6 foot tall, 74-inch reach. Both guys very, very big for lightweight. So it'll be interesting to see how they deal with fighting a larger opponent here. They're probably used to being, the bigger men in the cage. So Jamie Mullarkey coming off of a couple nice wins. Devontae Smith, who he was able to come back in the second round and take out. Kama Worthy made quick work of, as he should have. So that's great there. Jalen Turner, Jalen Turner's coming off of 2 back-to-back submissions as well. One against Uros Medic, which I think he was an underdog in that fight in September. So that was very impressive. So he's able to come through in these pressure spots and perform. Both guys have come through as underdogs before. So I think what this comes down to is Jamie Mullarkey's going to have to get some grappling going. He's going to have to kind of study and play the game plan of like a Matt Frevola, who was able to have success with the control time, controlling Jalen Turner. The issue is that Jamie Mullarkey is not as great of a grappler as Matt Frevola was. And I think that Jalen Turner learned a lot from that bout. So Jalen Turner doesn't look like a slouch in the ground either. I mean, he hits some good sweeps, some good reversals. Obviously, he's good with the submission game. He's got, some pretty good aptitude with the chokes, things like that. So Jamie Mullarkey's going to have to be very careful. He's going to have to use that pressure style, not let Jalen Turner rest, not let Jalen Turner get too comfortable with that striking, that good reach advantage that he has in the striking. I think Jalen Turner is more technically sound in the striking department, but Jamie Mullarkey puts on a pace. So I think some of that pace that he puts on, though, is kind of predicated on him being the bigger man in some of these bouts, too, leaning on his opponents, making them feel his size in the fight. He's not going to have that size advantage in this bout against Jalen Turner, so I think it's going to cause him some issues here. As much as I want to choose Jamie Mullarkey as an underdog here, I don't think he's as big of an underdog as I want him to be if I were to bet him in this fight. Jamie Mullarkey is going to have to really play the perfect game plan round to round here. Land some better strikes, land more total strikes, and then at the end of the rounds, kind of mix in some takedowns to secure them if they're close. I think that's a lot to ask against Jalen Turner, who's pretty talented, pretty powerful. So picking a side here is pretty tough. I think it's a close fight. I'm going to have to lean with Jalen Turner as the more talented, more technically sound fighter. But I think the better bet that I have already placed on this is the under 2.5 at minus 165. I think that's pretty good since both guys have followed that trend as far as, either being finished or finishing their opponents. So I like the under 2.5. I like the fight doesn't go. I've seen the fight doesn't go at like minus 210. Most bookies have the over-under at 1.5, of course, since they have such finishing potential. But I took the under 2.5. I found a book with that for minus 165. I like it. Just a small stab at that rather than picking a side. But I will take Jalen Turner for pick's sake to win, I'd say via second round TKO stoppage. Heavyweight bout up next between Sergey Spivak and Greg Hardy. Not much to say in this. I think it's a pretty simple fight. Obviously, if you're going to make the case for Greg Hardy to win this fight, you're going to, base that off of his athleticism, his natural size and power, and probably getting a first round or an early finish in this fight. I don't think he has many more ways to win than that, just being the bigger man with some power. I mean, he had Tai Tuivasa hurt in their fight, so, that proves right there how much power he has. We know how tough Tai is at this point. But Sergey Spivak is just a much more well-rounded, much more skilled mixed martial artist. The younger guy, 27 years old, although I don't think that's as big of a factor since 33 for Greg Hardy is not that old for heavyweight. But nonetheless, a younger guy, you might actually see, the more close to finished product from Greg Hardy at 33, whereas 27 for Sergey probably still has a lot more youth to, improve his game a bit. Not that he needs to here. I think his game that we've seen is pretty good. I mean, ground Greg Hardy, get him, underneath that crippling top pressure that Sergey employs on his opponents. Get him against the cage, grind him out with that ground and pound. I think it'll kind of be that type of fight where, a little feeling out process in the feet for the first minute or two. Sergey enters in range, gets a takedown, gets him against the cage, takes him down again, grounds him, gets in a dominant position where he can either win the fight, by ground and pound strikes, or if Greg Hardy rolls to defend against those strikes, he leaves his neck open, and Sergey has submissions as well. So give me Sergey Spivak to get I'll say a round 2 TKO victory over Greg Hardy. Minus 200 favorite for Spivak. I'd say that's pretty fair. Greg Hardy plus 170. I'd say if you're going to bet Greg Hardy, you might even want to just bet him inside the distance. Maybe by KO. I see the KO prop is plus 300 for him. So if you were on that side, I can't argue with you betting a larger, athletic, heavyweight to win by KO as an underdog, that's totally fine. I think that's a fair take. But I'm going to bet on the more well-rounded, experienced martial artist here. Give me Sergey Spivak in this fight. Okay, up next, a fun welterweight bout I'm looking forward to is Kevin Holland making his debut at 170, finally, against Cowboy Alex Oliveira. Now, Kevin Holland, man, what a letdown he has been ever since that crazy knockout against Jacare Souza. He went in there against Brunson as a huge favorite, dropped the ball. I think after that, he was kind of maybe an even money or slight underdog against Vettori. Dropped the ball in that fight as well. I mean, his takedown defense has failed him time and time again. Finally goes in there against Kyle Dawkins. There's that weird clash of heads, and then he gets submitted. So, say about that fight what you will, but he lost the fight. It's a no contest, but he tapped out. He lost the fight. Or maybe he went to sleep. I can't remember quite. But either way, I mean, he's been long overdue to come down to 170. The guy doesn't really make any kind of weight cut to get to 185. So with his tall frame, he's going to be pretty advantageous at 170, I think. And some of those issues with him getting out-muscled by these giant guys like Derek Brunson, Vettori, I think they'll be a little bit less severe at this weight class. Like Alex Oliveira has some takedown ability, but we'll see. I don't think he's going to have the ability to hold down Kevin Holland, maybe not even get him down at 5'11", 34 years of age, 76-inch reach, against the 81-inch reach and 6'3" Kevin Holland. Alex Oliveira, plus 235 underdog against Kevin Holland, who's once again a huge favorite, minus 300 favorite is Holland, making his debut. We haven't even seen him at 170 yet. See if he can make that weight, which, it shouldn't really be an issue in theory, but, minus 300 and a guy starting out in a new weight class, a guy who's dropped the ball as a favorite time and time again so far. I guess the things that he has going for him is the fact that he's much larger, and Alex Oliveira is actually a former, 155er, so he should have quite a bit of a size advantage on a couple of different fronts here. Being used to the guys at 185 and now coming down and facing, a blown-up lightweight. We haven't seen Alex Oliveira lose by strikes in quite some time. It's been since, I think, like Yancy Medeiros back in 2017. Other than that, he's been submitted. And Kevin Holland does have the submission ability. He's a high-level BJJ black belt under Travis Lutter. So he does have that, even though we don't see it that often. If he does get taken down by Cowboy at some point, maybe he can threaten submissions to get back to his feet, things like that. But I would imagine that he's going to have such an advantage on the feet as Kevin Holland. He's got the power advantage. He's got such a long range that it'll be hard for a Cowboy to get in range for striking or takedowns. So, yeah, I could see this going Kevin Holland's way, and he desperately needs a win, as does Cowboy Oliveira. But Cowboy Oliveira kind of been there, done that. Even though he's only 33 years old, he seems like he's, much older in fighter years than that, if that makes sense. Whereas Kevin Holland's the young 29-year-old, trying to regain some of that hype he's had in the past. So that being said, I don't trust Kevin Holland at this minus 300 price tag. Maybe I'd look to play him inside the distance if the number was juicy enough on it. But I'm going to call Kevin Holland to win by first round KO, TKO in this bout. Could it go the other way where Alex Oliveira gets a little bit of control time? It could be, but he started off so slow in activity in his last fight that I think Kevin Holland is going to really pressure him and give him some issues early in this fight. So give me Kevin Holland to win, like I said, first round, KO, TKO. Okay, up next is a bout between Edson Barboza and Bryce Mitchell at 145. This is such a big skill gap between these two guys, and it's an interesting matchup because Bryce Mitchell seems like he's ready for that next step up in competition, and now Barboza coming off of the knockout loss to Giga Chikadze in the summer. Interesting fight. So, this is as striker versus grappler as it gets, basically. We all know what Bryce Mitchell wants to do. As soon as the fight starts, he starts looking for the takedown, getting that top control and looking for submissions. Very, very high-level submission artist is Bryce Mitchell. And he's managed to stay undefeated and keep most of the fights, most of the time of the fights exactly where he wants it. He's in control, and he's, having his opponents fight off the submission attempts the entire time as he cruises to a decision victory or gets the submission. I think there's a big athletic difference, though, between Edson Barboza and Bryce Mitchell. Not only the experience, but I think Edson Barboza just has a clear speed advantage over him, and every fight starts from the feet. So Edson Barboza is going to have those demobilizing leg kicks. In fact, yeah, the poster that's over my shoulder here, UFC 123, was the first time I saw Barboza fight. I think that was his debut in the UFC against a guy named Mike Lulo, where Edson basically broke his legs, by the end of that fight. Mike Lulo could not stand. He got TKO'd. Edson Barboza has done this multiple times, TKO by leg kicks. I mean, just super fast, snappy kicks that can really just take the will out of his opponents. So very, very powerful striker, flashy technique, and it's the speed that allows him to get these strikes off. I mean, he's able to avoid getting taken down because his kicks are so snappy, already to his target and back to range without even giving his opponents any time to take him down. There have been a few guys that have done it though. Khabib Nurmagomedov, Kevin Lee, Tony Ferguson has had success grounding Edson Barboza. So it has been done. But these are high-level guys. I don't know if Bryce Mitchell is at that level yet. I know that there's people who have already stopped doubting Bryce Mitchell. They've already seen the potential in him, and this is why he's the favorite in this bout. But I have serious concerns. I think there's a lot to learn. I'm not sold on Bryce Mitchell against this high-level competitor in Edson Barboza just yet. I'm going to ride with the veteran here. I'm going to ride with the veteran just because there's such a disparity of skill and UFC experience. I just think Edson Barboza has been there, seen this, done that. He's 36 years old as a featherweight, though. So are we about to see the decline? We just saw him get knocked out, but, he is a high-level BJJ practitioner, though. I think he can stay safe if he is in the ground. The question is the control time. Will he be able to get back up to his feet? So at a plus 135 underdog price, I'll take that on Edson Barboza in this fight one last time. I can see Bryce Mitchell. I can see, but my other thing with Bryce Mitchell is he's been out of the cage for a year and a half. So a young guy at 27 years old, you assume he's still getting better with that time off. But, again, there's just too many question marks for me with Bryce Mitchell against this big of a jump of competition. So I'll use this as a learning experience on Bryce Mitchell. We'll see where he's really at now against a guy like Edson. But I'm going to take the dog shot on Edson Barboza. I think he eventually finds the knockout finish in round 2. All right, and we're finally at the main event of the evening. Colby Covington taking on George Masvidal. Colby Covington coming in as a huge favorite, minus 310 against the underdog price of George Masvidal at plus 250 currently. So is the line a little bit wide in this fight? Is Colby too much of a favorite? I'm not sure. I sort of agree more with where the line's at. These two guys, first off, these two welterweights are, I love the matchup, but these two guys combined are 0-4 against Kamaru Usman. No shame in that, I guess, and if you pick apart, you want to use Kamaru Usman, who's like the best welterweight of all time at this point. You want to use him as a measuring stick to gauge the rest of the talent of the division, at least in the top 5. And you look at, the 2 fights that Colby Covington had against Kamaru Usman, very, very close fights, both of them, Then you want to look at the 2 fights that George Masvidal had against Kamaru Usman. Were they that close? No. I mean, the first match was a total shutout, short notice or not. In the second fight, he comes in prepared and gets, highlight reel KO'd. So the skill difference there, if you want to take the MMA math that we normally avoid, it's, it basically shows a big skill gap between Colby Covington and George Masvidal, in my opinion. And just a more diverse array of skills. If you look at the numbers, significant strikes landed per minute. They're actually both, with a huge sample size for both guys, they're kind of both equally as active with the strikes. The difference comes, of course, with the grappling, the wrestling. Colby Covington averages about 4 takedowns per 15 minutes. Absolutely staggering over the amount of fights that he's had. To keep that average is, that shows a clear game plan. George Masvidal, by the numbers, by like knockdowns per significant strikes landed, is the more powerful guy, the more powerful fighter in there. As we've seen by that highlight reel knockout of Ben Askren, as we've seen highlight reel knockouts over Darren Till. The stoppage, even though it was a doctor stoppage, still he, knocked down Nate Diaz, and who's really doing that? Not really many people. So he's got some pretty explosive striking, very athletic guy. That's probably his path to victory here, is to catch Colby Covington with something he doesn't see coming, something very powerful, something creative. Maybe in their time training together, maybe George Masvidal has picked up some weird nuances from Colby Covington that the rest of us don't see. He finds some habits that Colby goes to that he can exploit with a powerful strike, a powerful counter, something like that. I think that's his only path to victory, and I think that warrants him being a plus 250 favorite here. So if I were to play George Masvidal, I'd probably play him inside the distance. I don't see him employing a 5-round game plan to outpoint Colby Covington. I'd be very surprised if that was the case, the outcome of this fight. But I definitely see Colby rinse-repeating, grinding him against the cage, grinding him against the canvas with some takedowns, just smothering top pressure, getting enough significant strikes and enough control time to win on the numbers. And by the time that George Masvidal keeps trying to pop to his feet and get drugged back down, the explosivity of George Masvidal's strikes in rounds 2, 3, 4, if it goes that far, are going to be a lot less significant. He's not going to really have the pop in his punches, his kicks. He's going to be tired, sucking air, and just having to survive the drowning pressure of Colby Covington. And Colby Covington is one of these guys. I think that whole shtick he has of being the bad boy, being the heel of the UFC, all of this stuff, I think is. It helps sell the fight and stuff like that and get some popularity, but it also distracts from the fact that he's actually really, really skilled. And I think people lose sight of that when he goes around acting like a clown year in, year out. They forget that he's actually very, very skilled and is the biggest threat to Kamaru Usman. So, big picture-wise, if either guy wins this fight, where do they go from here? They both fought the champion and lost him twice, so I'm not sure if there's a weight class change or, I don't know. They're going to have to shake up the welterweight division somehow, since Usman's kind of been clearing it out. So either way, clear-cut decision victory for Colby Covington is my pick here. I think he can get it done inside the distance if he finishes George late, but George is so tough to finish. Unless you're Kamaru Usman, very few people are finishing this guy. So I'm going to take Colby Covington to win by decision. All right, there you have it, the full card breakdown and predictions for UFC 272, a fun pay-per-view card. I'm looking forward to every fight on this card. The co-main event between Rafael Fiziev and RDA was canceled. I guess officially now it is Renato Moicano against RDA. Wasn't able to dive into a deep look of that fight, but just off the cuff, I would have to favor RDA. I don't think he's missed a step in his little over a year from the octagon. The much larger guy, Renato Moicano, taking this fight on such short notice. So big props to him, but I think that's too much against him in this fight. Being undersized, up a weight class compared to RDA, and he wasn't even in the country. He just had to fly all the way to Las Vegas, from South America. So I just don't think that's setting him up for very much success here. He is, kind of still riding that momentum of his last win a couple weeks ago, but I got to favor RDA in this matchup. Either way, leave a like, leave a subscribe. If you liked my underdogs, you liked my picks, you have a different opinion, leave a comment. I'd love to hear it. Otherwise, hit that subscribe, and I'll have the best bets and props video out later this week. So good luck in all your betting action. See you guys next time.